Alright, game 4 of the Newcomers tournament in January 2017 for Off-World Trading Company. Terra Incognita here alongside Black Magic. We have for this one 4 players. It's the 4P FFA tournament, so that's to be expected. Rahi, Zorbaz, Cheesecake NL, and OG's It's Bees. Cheesecake is the only person with a win to their name so far, and there's a very good scientific spot here in the northeast, Black Magic.
And that is absolutely what I would be looking at this point. You could take that high water price, you could take the high fuel price. Steel is super low. You just drop there and you can almost upgrade. Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
It's ticking all the way down. The scavengers are being taken. OG's It's Bees does take the very good sign spot. I think that's definitely the best thing. Zorbaz with the 2 non-adjacent high carbon. Not bad. It's not a bad scavenger spot. Cheesecake NL with the 2 adjacent carbon has basically everything that they need as well. Not so much on the water, but there's some water nearby, so it might be okay. And the final found is Rahi in the east, going robot, and I'm not sure I like this quite so much, albeit that all of the other good founds on the map had been taken. They are first to 2 as well. So Rahi is going to be able to get a little bit of a benefit for being the first maybe to go into the water in the middle of the map.
Now, if I were Rahi, what I would try to do to be an absolute pain is to take that high water right near OG's It's Bees. That still might be on a cooldown, but if you can do that, you severely limit.
And she has.
There we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bravo, Rahi. That was a fantastic move. So that way you box in OG's It's Bees a little bit more, and you can take that water and then maybe go into. I wonder what they're going to use with the other claims. You could go into some glass a little bit, buy up a little bit of silicon to prop up the market. There are a lot of things you could really do.
Glass and chems actually are both very profitable because electrolysis resources are very low. And so are quarry resources. So yeah, chems is what Rahi has decided that she is going to go into with those 2 claims. She's got that water coming in as well. It's going to be a lot of cash in hand for the time being. Cheesecake NL with the single high water as well. That's a little bit further away. The shipping cost shouldn't matter too much. It's more the time that takes to get there. That's the problem. That means the market has crashed out a little bit already by the time the water comes in for Cheesecake. But Cheesecake is going into 2 farms as well, so they're going to be able to use that water for something that's quite profitable basically now.
So I want to take a look at Rahi's move, what she just did. Now, there were 2 resources, there are 2 buildings that she could have gone into, chemicals or glass. And this is really subtle, but this is something that could help you down the line. Going into chemicals are good, but I would have actually preferred to go into glass for one particular reason. By going into chemicals, you are competing against 2 scavengers that essentially you're feeding them money with carbon. And early on, for scavengers, they don't have very much money. If you look at Zorbaz, Zorbaz has the 2 non-adjacent carbon. They also have the 2 water claims, and then they have the aluminum claim. So everything is completely spread out for them. Essentially, you're giving Zorbaz a little bit money. Likewise, with Cheesecake, you're giving Cheesecake is almost overproducing carbon, so you're just giving them a little bit money by doing that. If you had gone into glass and just bought up a little bit of silicon to push you through, I think that would have been a little bit better, and it would have sustained the market for a little while.
And also, demand for glass is going to be quite a lot higher than demand for chems in the short term. Because 3 of our players are using it to upgrade, and nobody else was producing it.
That is an excellent point.
So glass is going to stay good for longer, whereas chems, you can see, is already crashing out. I mean, it's still very profitable, don't get me wrong, but it's only $50, and it's going to be falling very quickly from those tiles that Rahi has. Zorbaz first into the glass market, and that's going to be really beneficial, I think, for them, because silicon right now. Silicon was quite cheap. It's a little bit more expensive now, but Zorbaz has the silicon to support the glass, and the glass is extremely profitable, almost $100 a tile for those.
One more comment really quickly about the transition for glass versus chemicals. When you're talking about doing that, the other thing that you want to look at is are people shipping things a lot all around the map. Because you can see the fuel price is escalated down already to 109, and those two scavengers are shipping a bunch of carbon and everything else all over the place. So that was another reason why you want to go into glass instead, because the chemicals really crashed out, and it looks about like a good time to rotate into something like some reactors.
Yeah, which is exactly what Cheesecake NL is doing. 3 of them going down. That isn't sustainable in the long term. He only has the 1 high water to support that, but still, in the short term at least, those reactors are going to be very profitable. Zorbaz going for the single electrolysis reactor as the patented owner of that particular strategy. What do you make of that logic?
Well, in this particular case, that's something where instead of keeping all of that water online, that's where you have, unless they are against the map over there, which is, I would have liked to see if you can fit 1 more in there and maybe get rid of the high water or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to get a friend now as well, so that's
yes.
that's good.
So I am frequently bashed for the single tile, but let me tell you one thing about it that's actually good. It puts you starting toward building the triangle, and when you have claims there, it's not going to be a single tile for very long. So sometimes when people catch me with a single tile, it's just because I'm about to transition, I'm about to upgrade, or I'm about to buy a claim. So not always though.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think they're all very good reasons to have just a single tile. Cheesecake NL has not got very much water, and that was a problem for him until Zorbaz just sold his stockpile down, and it's now $1 again.
Oh no, Zorbaz.
Yeah, so when you have that amount of water, and when you see that somebody else is running a deficit of water, a big deficit of water in Cheesecake's case, selling all that water and making it $1 is usually a mistake, because that water is going to get better as the deficit is continued from Cheesecake.
And so, one thing we need to point out: anytime you see a resource in the single digits like that, instantly go buy 100.
Yeah, and certainly when it's $1, because that costs you basically nothing.
Yes. And so that's something where you can build a stockpile, and I guarantee all of those markets will rebound throughout the game. And you can see water's already rebounded to 12, partially because there's a water deficit there. Not enough people have enough water to support this.
So I think Zorbaz realized his mistake and just bought up a bunch of water to try and stop Cheesecake from making quite so many profits from what is an unsustainable water situation. Although he just sold a bunch down again, so I don't know what's going on really. Everyone's at HQ4 anyway. Let's talk a little bit about patents. Rahi going for teleportation, which I guess to support the silicon and the aluminum is okay. The thing about teleportation though is that fuel is not very expensive right now, and it is crashing. So I'm not sure about that teleportation. There might not be a whole lot of value in that.
Well,
at
remember
this point
though,
in the game.
Rahi is robotic though, so that's running off of power.
Oh, it's running off power. Yeah, excuse me.
It actually helps. It actually helps a little bit. That being said, as the first patent to go and get, I think that I would go for the quick superconductor in this particular case. You've got 2 solar panels right next to your base. I think I would prefer to see superconductor because you can get in, get it really quickly, and start to see the benefit almost immediately.
And Rahi punished for not protecting their patent lab. Cheesecake taking that away, at least in the short term, and Rahi doesn't seem to have the money to take it back either. So yeah, it's gonna be a little bit difficult. Is that what she's trying to do with that money, or she's trying to get to the upgrade?
Well,
I'm not exactly sure.
You can see for Rahi.
Oh, Rahi's going into Zorbaz. Excuse me.
Zorbaz.
So yeah, so Rahi's about to kill Zorbaz, and that I think is going to work because Rahi is 5,000 away.
I think that is an okay play. I mean, I don't know how I feel about it. On one hand, you get an HQ5, and they have some adjacent tiles right around their base. They're not going to make very much money, but you do eliminate a player out of the game. And if you viewed them as the biggest threat, then that's definitely a good move. That being said, I like Cheesecake's base a whole lot better because there are more adjacent tiles and you're switching, you're shipping a little bit less.
So
Uh,
there is the buy on Zorbaz. So Rahi gets the stock price bump and the level 5 subsidiary, which might be quite good. I think I'm a big fan of that play. I think Rahi has put themselves quite significantly far ahead with that.
so let's see. I'm gonna take an opposite point in this case, and I'm actually gonna say for the moment I prefer Cheesecake's setup. Not only is Cheesecake on HQ5 with a whole bunch of adjacent tiles, but you're honestly Rahi's not gonna make very much money on Zorbaz for quite a while. Um, Zorbaz is okay, but if you look at all of the on-world prices, they're not the best. So I kind of like Cheesecake's play of just ignore that and keep going, mostly because you could. Let's take a look at the off-worlds. That's another thing. Off-worlds aren't that great.
They're not great.
So okay. So,
Yeah.
so since off-worlds aren't all that great, yeah, I guess I am okay with it. Because
and the
there's
fact
no
that-
other good place.
And the fact that the subsidiary is already level 5 means that they're not going to have to upgrade anymore, which means that all of the money that they make is just going to go straight into Rahi's profit and pocket. And you can see 250 a second already. That's a pretty profitable thing to be having at this point in the game. You know, that's more than any of these pleasure domes are making.
Yes.
That's that's as much as like this glass triangle that Cheesecake NL is making. It's all money in the bank. You've got
Yes.
the stock price boost as well, and you've got the fact that the upgrade is still to come, very shortly to come. In fact, for Rahi, that's going to put her to HQ5 and making a
So
bunch
let's
of money.
see. So looking at everything, I think at this point I would agree with you after looking at everything that yeah, that was a good move to do, but it's mostly only because off-worlds aren't great.
Mm.
If off-worlds
that changes
if
it
any
if
of the
off-worlds
off-worlds
are
were good, then I would say that Cheesecake has the better approach in that case, because you're going to make a little bit from Zorbaz, but if you can be the first person to get an off-world and be able to defend it okay, I think that would actually be a better play. Now, I would like to point out that Cheesecake's patent lab at the moment is going toward perpetual motion. Now, power's at $6, and I don't know that I would agree with that as being the best available patent.
I don't know. I mean, it might recover, only because OG's It's Bees has 3 wind turbines that presumably they're going to rotate away from at some point in the future. There aren't a whole lot of geotherms in play. There's 2 that I can see, 3 that I can see. So that permanent power production isn't necessarily there. So maybe it'll recover at some point. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly like it's almost no benefit in the short term and possibly no benefit in the long term. So yeah, it's a questionable play for sure.
So, taking a look, this is actually a great time. I've spent some time talking about Cheesecake so far, but I would like everybody to take a look at Cheesecake's base. This is how you lay out a base,
Yeah.
essentially trying to keep triangles everywhere, keeping a lot of your claims right next to where your base is so that you can rotate them when they become unprofitable. So glass, for instance, is only making about $19 a second. This is a good time where you could rotate glass into something else. You could even go into something like steel, even though you're a scavenger, because you would end up making $52 a second off of it.
Yeah,
So-
it's basically perfect, isn't it, in terms of the layout of the base? Just that's optimally how you'd want to lay it out, particularly with power surges in the game. So no EMPs. There are slowdown strikes that are AOE, but even so, like it's you'd rather have vulnerability to that than to power surges.
So this is something where I've noticed Cheesecake has the off-world online, which is fantastic. Now the next move, I think, is to go after, see if you can pick off, say, something like OG's It's Bees. Rahi can pretty much defend herself.
Yeah,
but if you can get into
OG's It's Bees has an off-world that's active at the moment rather than building, and
Yes.
has it protected as well. And there's no thinking machines in this game because Zorbaz had thinking machines before he was bought out. So OG's at Beast does have a little bit of an advantage there, and on-world prices are kind of dead. Like they're kind of dead apart from steel.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, off-worlds. I mean, even though they're not in terms of the amount of money that they make, they're not that profitable. They're still decent in the context of the game because prices are so deflated.
So here's an interesting for people just looking at it. It looks like Cheesecake has an off-world and OG's its B's it's off has an off-world, or Cheesecake will have an off-world in a second, and they look relatively even from just taking a look at it. But if you look at the cost of the off-world, it's completely different. OG's its B's, it's about 108K for that scientific player to put that up. Meanwhile, it's significantly cheaper, where it's about 30K cheaper for Cheesecake to be able to go into that, and so it's not necessarily an even swap there. So Cheesecake, I like the decision. OG's its B's, I still like the decision, but it's not quite as good of a move.
That is a major error, though, not gooning that off-world. Although I guess the Cheesecakes had it taken away by Rahi. Although I guess, I mean, goons are pretty expensive.
Goons are 50K, and they're still...
Yeah.
You've got 4.5K, so that's another good point there. Goons are 50K, slowdown strikes are 2K. I'm surprised we haven't seen any. Actually, what I would like to see is somebody throw a power surge on one of these off-worlds. That's an interesting point, that you have so many different ways at the moment to attack it and to slow those down. Meanwhile, though, there's nothing really you can do to make money except for an off-world. So.
Yeah. I mean, you really need to be in. You need to be in off-world, and I guess the defense against having one off-world taken away is to build two. That sort of helps you out a little bit. Rahi's building an off-world as well, so she's going to be able to get in on that action very soon. She had the one from Cheesecake NL taken back by Cheesecake NL, albeit it got most of a launch off before it did that. OG's its B's going into Rahi. Rahi doesn't immediately have the money to defend herself.
Because Rahi is building and about to finish an off-world, so that
So OG's its B's doesn't have the money to finish this, but Cheesecake NL does have the money to finish it if they want to. And it's a question of whether they want to, and Rahi now has the money to defend themselves. So that's going to be the end of that one.
So let's take a look there at Rahi's placement of the off-world market. So on one hand, it looks like what Rahi did was in order to make sure that you still have adjacency for those two electronics factory, she made sure to build the off-world to the left. The problem with doing that is I would have rather seen it on that low iron to the right that's already gooned. Goons are 50K, and so if anybody tries to pop it, then you have essentially you could have about 1-3 launch from it, versus this is completely undefended.
Yeah,
so,
it's undefended, and that's the problem with it. I mean, in terms of the AoE vulnerability, it's not very vulnerable. So it's sort of out on a limb there, which means that slowdown strikes aren't all that effective. It means that power surge is only going to affect that with the goon on the electronics factory next door. But yeah, it does need to be on a goon tile, because you do need to defend your off-worlds, especially in this sort of situation.
Now, Rahi is being attacked at this point for OG's its B's. This is actually an interesting scenario here. Cheesecake NL has a stock price of only $26 and has 2 off-worlds. I'm trying to figure out if there's any point where you might say, well, I guess Rahi now has 2 off-worlds, so you've got to go after the leader at this point.
Yeah,
I was trying to figure out if
kind
there's
of
any
do.
possible way to,
I'm still struggling to see how OG's its B's is going to make this buy on Rahi. They just don't have the earning potential with the one. I mean, yeah, like you said, off-worlds are the game right now. You need to be in off-worlds, and you need to be producing whatever the off-world launch is, and pretty much that's food. So yeah, you need to have those 2 off-worlds down, and having stock in Rahi at this point, it was just delaying that off-world, which you need to have down. In terms of the target, I think it's absolutely right. I think you do need to go after Rahi. I'm not sure what you do if you're Rahi. I guess you just try and get your stock back by going after OG's its B's, but Cheesecake NL is a very tempting target as well.
So at this particular point, it is kind of ironic that if you're going after somebody, you have to make sure that you can kill them. And unfortunately, what happens is Rahi has such a high stock price that it's going to be a really difficult kill. It's kind of ironic that the bees are the ones that are throwing rocks at the hornet's nest. In this particular instance, because there's no way that bees can really finish that, and so by antagonizing Rahi, all Rahi has to do is start buying up OGs and bees, and it essentially kills them. Meanwhile, Cheesecake is being rocked by Rahi. I'm not sure that Rahi should be targeting Cheesecake with those mutinies. I think that I would be targeting the person that bought into you somehow.
Yeah, I guess the reason Rahi went after Cheesecake is because she has the spy on the offworld and she knew it wasn't defended.
Okay.
So I think that was the reason for that. And she actually has another mutiny stored up now.
There you go. And
she might take it back.
OG's It's Bees does have both of those goons.
Yeah.
So
you go after the target that's vulnerable. I think Rahi's in a very good position here to take the probably to take the buy. Just the subsidiary. I mean, the subsidiary's again just been consistently making $500 a second for Rahi, which isn't an amazing subsidiary, but like it's not bad either. And just like the amount of money, because Rahi's had that since like what, Sol 4 or something.
yes.
Like that's a long time that's been producing a reasonable amount of money. Like not a whole lot of money, but some money.
Yes.
So yeah, like it's a useful thing to have. Like it's a supplement to a fairly low income game. Basically, it's giving you like most of another off-world in terms of profit.
So let's take a look at launches. I'm looking at Rahi.
Yeah, I'm looking at this as well. Look at Chems. Chems are so good.
Well, look at electronics.
And electronics as well.
47.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
47K. Chems are 46K. So you always have to
Cheesecake
take
spotted
a look.
it. Cheesecake is launching Chems
Good.
at 46k rather than Oxygen at 37.
Let's see, and Bees hasn't quite spotted it yet. They're still good. They're still good launches. This is another thing we should take a look at. So, OG's It's Bees is not queuing up launches. So that means that as long as you're paying attention to it, you can actually launch the most, the best thing to launch at any particular point. Because as soon as one runs out, you just take a look at it and go, okay, this is good.
There's a risk to that though, isn't there? Which is
There
that you
is a
don't pay
risk.
attention to it, and you do what Rahi did in the last game, which is not launch anything.
That is correct, yeah. One thing you can do to prevent what Rahi's problem was in terms of not launching is early on you're going to have a little bit of a dead time where you've built all the buildings you can and you're just waiting for things to come in. What you can do is open up the window for the off-worlds and just go ahead and take a look at whichever one is the highest price, and then just go ahead and just set it to auto launch that. That way at least you'll have a launch starting immediately, even if you forget about it, when
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
building
What on
stuff.
earth is going on with the stock market in this game? I guess OG's It's Bees realized that their number was up and sold out of Rahi to try and get the buy on Cheesecake, which they're very close to actually. Very close to indeed.
But that is not a good move because
No.
Rahi essentially has OG's It's 5 of OG's It's Bees plus.
Yeah.
As soon as Bees makes that buy, Rahi's stock is going to go up.
Yeah.
which pushes the goal even farther away in terms of making that buy. So
Yeah.
I was wondering if at any particular point there was a way that Bees could just sell out and get the buy on Cheesecake, but there was never really a good time. That was the wrong move to do it. I suspect maybe Bees realized that they couldn't finish the buy on Rahi, and so that's why they did it. But I mean, it's a no-win situation at this point. Rahi ended up being,
Yeah.
Rahi bought the best of Zorbas. And,
Yeah, and it
bought the
was
rest of them.
and honestly, I think it was all about that early buy on Zorbas. That was basically the story of this game. There wasn't enough money to be made on World to compete against that subsidiary income, and I think Rahi, for that reason, is going to take this game very close to what I guess Rahi's just going to wait. Yeah, there's the buy on Cheesecake, but Rahi's already nearly half of the way. She definitely shouldn't be buying her own stock here.
Yes.
just be finishing the game, I think.
Yep. So that's a good thing to point out for newer players in terms of when you get to that last 1 versus 1, and in this case, Bees just made the buy, so Bees doesn't have any money. That's actually where, if you're comfortable enough in your standing like this, you sell out 5 of your stock and just use that cash to finish the game a little bit quicker. And particularly in a tournament where the tiebreaker is what sol you finish the game on, you want to try to buy and finish the game a little bit faster than everybody else. So
yeah, absolutely. So Rahi is half of the way there to the buy on OGs It's Bees, a much more profitable subsidiary, and equal numbers of off-world markets. Rahi does have some optimizations as well, and again, I question these optimizations just because on-world prices are not quite so good this game. I mean, they're going to be helpful, and chems are going to be cheap as well. But again, you're tying up, as a robot, you're tying up 2 of your claims for a long time, getting some optimizations that really, it's not going to be making you a whole lot of money. The thing you need to be focusing on is the off-world launch at this point, because you're getting 50k a time from those.
And speaking of off-world launches, it does make me sad that
nobody's launching electronics.
No one's launching electronics. 57k.
Yeah.
So that's something to really pay attention to when you're doing your launches every once in a while. And you can think of it this way: even if you only check your off-world every time the screen goes dark for nighttime, just pop in really quickly and check and make sure that you're still optimized. You're still using the same optimal launch. Just think of it every time every time it goes dark, just go check on it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's something to be said. It's not quite as simple necessarily as picking the highest number
Yes.
from the list of off-world launches just here, because you might be, if you're not producing something and your opponent is producing something, if you're chain launching the most profitable thing, you might also be feeding money into your opponent because the on-world price is going up and they're able to sell. So it's not necessarily always the highest number that you want to be launching, but generally it is, and certainly none of those conditionals apply in this game.
Absolutely, that's an excellent point. So we
In
are almost
any
there,
case,
99%.
Rahi's at 99, about to be at 100%, and I think auto-selling everything now will give her the Game 4 win.
Wait your glass
kiln.
What glass kiln? OGs It's Bees has a glass kiln?
Glass kiln. Oh dear, yeah. I guess she's pointing out that they're losing a whole bunch of money from the glass kiln. Minus 110. Yeah, those needed to be transitioned a while ago. I missed that one. Not only that, but also feeding money into Rahi, who was making that silicon.
Well, interestingly enough, though, if that's the case, then Rahi could have been buying into silicon to make it even more painful if OGs It's Bees didn't notice that. So
that's where you get the sweet network virus down. Sadly, there weren't any network viruses in this game, and really punish that mistake. But yeah, Rahi takes this one, and very well played, getting the early buy, and that really won her the game in this one. And as I said, I mean, I think I wasn't across this at the time, but I guess the upgrade from Zorbaz was a very greedy upgrade.
Yes.
If they couldn't defend themselves after that, so that was really the mistake that Zorbaz made. Other than that, they were in a good position, I think, early on to produce lots of stuff and get themselves into the lead.
And that's the one that you really need to look at. Before you upgrade to HQ5, you always want to take a look at everyone else's cash plus what the on-world prices are. So if anybody has cash and let's say everybody decides to gang up on you, could they get close to finishing the buy before you could defend yourself? So take a look at everybody else's cash, and then if you need to, buy 1 or maybe 2 stock. You don't have to buy all 3, but at least buy 1 or 2 before you go from HQ4 and HQ5, and just push it off a little bit to make sure that you don't get majority bought like that.
Yep. And OGs It's Bees, I want to point out something as well, because I mentioned about these wind turbines a while ago when we were talking about perpetual motion. But these wind turbines didn't ever get rotated out, and I think probably they needed to be at some point. You need to go after the things that make you money, and for most of the game, in fact pretty much the whole game, In fact, I think the highest power ever got after the initial crash was where it is now, at $40, because these wind turbines were still up. There were 3 wind turbines as well from Cheesecake NL that he couldn't really transition away from. So that power production was going to stick. So I think at that point, if you have something that's adjacent to your base, even if they are wind turbines, but they're adjacent to your base, you can make something that's more profitable. Although again, there wasn't a whole lot that was profitable in this game, honestly, on world. So maybe it was an okay decision.
So you know what, you bring up an excellent point. So when we took a look at Cheesecake's base before, we were taking a look at how fantastic it was laid out. However, the one thing that they could have done a little bit differently is those 3 wind turbines away from their base.
Yep.
Instead of locating them all the way over there, just to the north of their chem labs at the very end is where they should have actually been. They could have been in a triangle there, or they could have been in a line. That way, you can rotate them later on when power crashes out. So anytime you can, if you're going to do something like 3 wind turbines or 3 solar panels, things like that, anytime you can get them next to your base, it's so much better because you can rotate them out when power crashes.
Yeah, that's an extremely good point. I think, I mean, power is one of those really interesting things that you don't necessarily think about when you're a newer player in terms of like how different it is in terms of how it operates. So it doesn't make you like you need to have power online, but it's very situational as to whether it's the optimal thing, even if the number it says it's making is the biggest, as it were. So the ability to rotate those out when you want to, rather than having to make power all the time, because of where you need to put power, often you need to have them away from your base. Either it's a geotherm or it's like a ledge for a wind turbine or whatever. Maybe it's not optimal to make solar panels or to build solar panels. But just it's such a big advantage if you can have power that's next to your base, because you get to make those type of decisions. And like a lot of new players I know are like, I need to cover my power costs first. That's why you see the level 1 geotherms or whatever. But it's a very tricky thing when to build power and where to build power. And I think that's the thing that sort of, once you understand that, it sort of makes a lot of other things make more sense, as it were.
And as tempting as it is to go for a very early power play, sometimes it actually ends up benefiting you. I believe that Blues had made this point in the stream recently. Sometimes it ends up benefiting you waiting for a longer period of time, because the power rises and then you can end up putting power down because you're the first person to get to that market, and you end up paying it off so quickly that you can often be the first person making money even though you delayed it for that long. So.
Yep, absolutely. Just to tie up a couple of other loose ends, Rahi made over $500,000 from that, from the dividend revenue from Zorbaz. Which is a lot of money.
That sure is.
And that basically was the difference between the other players and Rahi in this game. Even though Rahi was slightly slower to the HQ5 upgrade, that dividend revenue ended up paying off big time.
Absolutely.